Welcome everyone to episode 18 of Raw Sport. My name is Ahmed Al-Huli, your host, and as he does every week, Mr. Tony Sheen joins me on the show. Tony, how are you, buddy?
Ahmed, good morning to you, and I can't wait to get stuck into our next guest following a huge weekend of grand final action.
Well, do we have an episode for you guys? We have a huge guest, the man himself, Mr. Ricky Nixon. Welcome to the show, buddy. How are you?
Very well, thanks, Ahmed and young Tony Sheen. I'm very impressed with that photo at the start of your show of Tony because that was taken 138 years ago.
Yes, when I was actually quite good looking and had all the girls chasing me.
Yeah, well, that ended quickly when they found out about chicken.
Now, Ricky, let's get stuck into the hard stuff. How was your grand final weekend?
Yeah, look, it was great for a few reasons. Ran my own breakfast that sold out in about the first 24 hours. Sam Newman and Dane Swan did it, which was great because Sam took over at the start, as he does, and asked Dane what it's like to play in a grand final because you played in a drawn one, a losing one, and a winning one.
Winning one.
Yeah, and he gave a great insight into what it was like, and then he headed off to the MCG and what a game it was. I mean, in the end of the day, both teams deserved to probably win, and I think they were the two best teams, barring GWS at the end of the season. So it was a great result for everybody, including the AFL.
Did you watch the game?
Yes, I did. It was the first game I watched this year, full game.
Really?
Because most weekends I'm travelling to Australia with Swanee, playing these one-off games, and you just don't get to watch games. And plus, back in the day, I used to watch 8 games every weekend. Now I wouldn't know who half the players are, the young players in particular, because I just don't get. I'm not saying that because I'm cursing the game. It's just that I actually don't have the time to watch it.
So who were you barracking for?
Well, this was my biggest mistake ever on grand final day. So some guys on Facebook said, "Chicken, who's going to win the Norm Smith?" So who do you reckon I said?
Bobby Hill.
Correct. One guy won 47,000, the other one won 33,000. So I sent them a message. You didn't win that much. They said, "Here's a receipt." I said, no, you've got to pay 20% management fee to me.
So you made two blokes, $75,000, and you didn't get a brass razoo?
No, I mean, he was at something like, don't hold me to this, I think it was about 50 to 1 or something ridiculous. Because one guy had about 500 on him, so whatever that adds up to get to. But it was, look, it's always a player like that a lot of times. It's the player that's probably the least likely to win the Norm Smith, who's a small forward and kicks 3 to 5 goals, wins the premiership for his team or club.
Yeah, and it's fantastic considering that he was a GWS player. He wanted to go to Essendon 2 years ago. He's now a Collingwood player, and now he's a premiership star.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also find those players tend to not play that well again in the next few years, and I'm not trying to curse him. I hope he does because he's certainly got a lot of talent.
Yeah, now just take us inside before we get stuck into the trade period preview. Take us inside what the crowds were like in Melbourne so that our listeners and our viewers get a real insight into, somebody of your stature in the AFL world and what it was like for Collingwood to win its first grand final in 13 years.
Well, ironically, I've probably got more friends at Collingwood, in inverted commas. Paul LeCurier, I used to manage, he's probably one of my favourite players of all time. He spoke to me about, just not officially, but my thoughts on who should coach them. And I must admit, I was pushing Ross Lyon at the time. He came back to me and said, "Look, Rick, we interviewed Craig McRae, very impressive." And I said, "Oh, well, look, I still think Ross because of the experience, but I have a big rap for Craig McRae. Everywhere he's been, there's, massive thoughts that he's a great player manager, not the type of player manager I was, but the word coach doesn't exist. Or you're not a coach anymore, you're a player manager. And he's the perfect player manager. You speak to Darcy Moore and hear what Darcy's got to say. He just says how he embraces every player. He knows what their grandmother's name is. He knows, if someone's sick in their family, he cares about them. And some coaches over the last few years, the last decade, have been all about me, I, not team.
Interesting. Ricky, not to state the obvious, it's one of the we are in one of the most interesting parts of the year, other than the grand final. Obviously, trade week is upon us. You were once at the top of the table when it came to player management. This was probably one of the biggest parts of your job. Take us through, what's it like managing so many athletes at this time of year? We want the
look,
behind the scenes
yeah.
stuff.
I wouldn't say nerve-wracking or anxiety type issues or whatever else, but it's, I didn't get enough sleep time during the next 2 weeks. You'd be on the phone because, a lot of players are overseas. I'll never forget Justin Blumfield at Essendon. Kevin Sheedy wanted to trade him to Richmond, and he had a year to run on a contract, but they were over the salary cap. I was ringing and ringing and ringing him. He finally answered at 5 minutes to 2. The deadline was 2 o'clock. And I said, they want you to go to Richmond. He goes, but I've already got a contract at Essendon. I said, well, what if I ask Richmond to give you a 3-year deal on double the money? He said, if you can get that, I'll go. Anyway, rang Kevin Sheedy back and said he doesn't want to go. And Sheeds, who's a good friend of mine, is like, you bloody hell, Nixon, you don't run this, we do this, da, 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 da. Cut a long story short, by the time we did the deal, it's now 20 past 2. I'm like, well, it's not going to go through because it's got to be there at 2 o'clock. So I rang the AFL and said, we've got a big problem. They said, what's that? I said, your fax machine isn't working. I said, yeah, Rick, it's been playing up for a while. I said, oh, that's good. We've done this deal. I said, oh, we'll just put it through as it was before 2 o'clock. I think it went bang.
Ricky, that's a fantastic story. Also, as much as it's nerve-wracking and creates a lot of anxiety for the players and their families, did you feel that anxiety too, having to ring somebody that you didn't want to, saying you've got to move clubs?
Well, Tony, you've made a significant point there accidentally, and that is the list of things that I used to tick off. The first one was family. It's not all about the player. It's sometimes about the wife, the kids. How old are they? Moving to Perth from Sydney or something, it's not that easy. The kids are in school, their friends are there. The wife might have a good job. So, is West Coast Eagles going to pay for Buddy Franklin to come there, give the wife a job, put them in private schools like they were in Sydney, and pay him double the contract? So a lot more work goes into it than probably the public is aware. And the agents, and Paul Connors probably is the number one agent these days, they effectively control the trade period, not the actual clubs. But the clubs are just a single entity, if that makes sense.
Interesting. We hear, like in other sporting codes, players and messaging managers, I want to get out of my club, write a headline, get something moving. Have you had any instances of that? I'm sure you have, but anything that you can share with us?
Yeah, look, probably ones too that are probably best not to break confidentiality here, but I've had a few big names say, get me out of here. I'll say one. Richo at Richmond once said, we're the worst club in the world, I can't play here anymore. So I lined up a meeting with Dennis Fagan at Carlton. And I'll get for what I say, but Richo came back and goes, Chicken, I think Carlton's worse than Richmond at the moment. So he didn't go there. Thank God. Well, I said I didn't want him to go there because he's basically the most favourite son at Richmond. He's a great mate of mine and a great bloke. And so that never happened. But one that the public's not aware of, it was back in the day, a kid called Wayne Carey was going all right. And Geelong rang me and said, you reckon North Melbourne would accept $3 million? They were $3 or $4 million in debt, which is equivalent of about $30 million these days. We'll pay the debt out, so they're, in the black, and get Carey here. But it never happened. North Melbourne didn't want to do it, et cetera, et cetera. But if you go, what's the biggest trade of all time? This wasn't a trade, but it is. Gary Ablett going from Hawthorn to Geelong, Gary Ablett Senior, probably the worst mistake ever.
Yeah.
Wow.
Are you glad that Richo stayed with the Tigers and Wayne Carey stayed with North Melbourne?
Yeah, look, I talked a lot of players into a lot of stars. Brad Johnson at one stage, he thought it was over at the Western Bulldogs. He ended up changing the way he went about things and had another 4 years and played really well. And that was the basis of why I talked him into staying. Mate, you want to be known as a legend of one club. That's why I'm really proud of Dustin Martin. He hasn't taken the money and gold to Gold Coast, or he's saying he's not. He's going to play 300 games. Richmond deserve that. The fans deserve that.
There's another 2 weeks to go, Chicken.
Yeah, I know. But it's also, if I was managing Dusty, and I did, I found him back in the day up in Castlemaine or near there. And you just basically explain to them, this is the advantages of staying in a club like Richmond for one more year. And that is, when you retire, you're a club legend, AFL legend. But guess all the big businessmen who barrack for Richmond, they'll help you into property deals. They'll help you into this. Help you know. If you go to Gold Coast for 1 year, they'll go, oh, stuff him. He's not a Richmond man. He did us over.
Yeah, it's a really good point, which is probably another segue into how would Brodie Grundy and his management be feeling this week?
Yeah, Brodie's an interesting one. I'm loath to, what would you say, assess his playing ability, I suppose, because it's a bit hard to. Is he a ruckman who goes forward and kicks goals? Not really. Is he a great ruckman, athletic-wise? Probably. Who's the best club for him? Well, Port Adelaide made a decision, I reckon, based on GWS's Briggs. Briggs is a Shane Mumford, just a big bulk of a man. And that's what is working for clubs more than that athlete-type one. So I think Port Adelaide made the right decision and didn't go with him. Sydney need a ruckman desperately, so, they probably don't have any choice on it. But it's what's confusing me, I'll have to check the legalities or laws around this, is Collingwood are obviously paying, half his contract at Melbourne. If he agrees to a trade to go from Melbourne to Sydney, does Collingwood still have to pay anything? I'd say not. It's a new contract.
Interesting. Question.
But I think there's still a drawback for Collingwood and Craig Kelly is it's still in their salary cap for the next 2 years. So they haven't got to play. But you can't argue you won a premiership.
Ricky, you've been able to identify some of the greatest talent that this game's seen. What are the secrets, mate? You're no longer in this game. What are your secrets? What do you look for?
Oh, you've got to be a really good bullshitter. That's probably the key point. No, I looked, was it good planning or a great idea or was it just good timing? It was a lot of both, I think. Like when I started, there was only, I think, about 4 agents, and they were like Peter Jess, who's been around for longer than me, but he's an accountant. And there was a couple of others. They were basically all lawyers or accountants. What I brought to the table was the off-field side, the marketing side, the endorsements. So the easy sell, and I'll quickly tell this story, is I used to have a private phone in my office which had a landline because there was no mobile phones in 1995. And the players could ring me privately. So if I picked it up, it rang, it was Wayne Carey or it was whoever. And I rang one day and this boy said, Ricky, it's Gary Ablett. And I said, oh, piss off. I didn't manage him, hung up. Rang again, Ricky, it's really Gary Ablett. I said, what do you want? He goes, oh, you made Wayne Carey $100,000 off the field last year. He said, if you make me $100,000, I'll sign with you for 10 years. I said, Gary, I'll get you $100,000 in 3 weeks. He goes, wow, you're amazing. I went, God, how am I going to do this? I'll have to borrow the money. Anyway, I swear this is true. 5 minutes later, this receptionist said, there's a guy on the phone wants to talk to you, Rick, about some cardboard cutout or something. I said, I'll put him through. He goes, Rick, you manage Gary Ablett? I said, yeah, I've been managing him for years. He goes, oh, great, we could never find him. Can we do a life-size cardboard cutout of him? Would $50,000 be all right? I said, it's Gary Ablett. He goes, what about 100? I said, done. Rang Gary. He goes, oh, you're a guru. I said, well, mate, you've got to be in the photo studio at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. Don't be late. He turned up at 3 o'clock. And he had Gary Jr. and Nathan with him. Anyway, the 2 little boys were piss farting around. Gary's in the toilet for 3 hours combing his 1 strand of hair. And they knocked a light stand over. Gary came running out. The photographer came running out. And he goes, that's it. I've had enough of you 2 little kids. Goes to his computer, prints off a picture of Gary taking the mark of the century. He gives it to the 2 kids and he goes, now piss off out of the studio. The kids go, Dad, can you sign it for us? I thought, God, I never asked my dad for an autograph. Gary said, piss off. I said, Gary, it's your own kids. He said, I'm not signing it, Rick. I promise you. The photographer's gone, that's it, Mr. Hotshot Agent. I'm taking these 2 kids out of the room. You got 2 minutes to fix this or the $100,000 off the table. Oh, no, my new BMW's off the table. Gary, what? He said, I'm not doing it, Rick. I'm not doing it for these 2 little pricks. I said, Gary, it's your own kids. He said, yeah, right. It's called 3 times this week to see the principal. These little pricks have been bringing home footy cards. I've been signing them. They've been selling them for $70.
That is fantastic.
It's better. 10 years later, which was about 6 years ago, I was in Adelaide walking down the Mall in the morning and this guy had a hoodie on. I said, g'day, chicken. I said, g'day, mate. He goes, it's Gary. I said, Gary who? He pulled off the hoodie. It was Gary Jr. I said, mate, I've got a bone to pick with you. I said, what's that? I said, you tell this story all the time about us, getting Dad to sign cards. I said, yeah. He said, well, don't tell it. It's total utter bullshit. I said, oh, sorry, is it? He goes, yeah. So I said, you weren't getting $70. He goes, no, we're getting 150.
Chicken with the tails. Now, chicken, does that stuff still get you really excited? The hairs on the back of your neck stand up, the phone's ringing, you're making deals. Do you still actually, do you miss the cut and thrust of it?
Well, interestingly enough, I've probably have come up with a idea. Well, it's a business for next year, which I can't say a lot about at the moment, but I'm excited as I was the day the sports management started. I think it'll be the new way to go in media and stuff. And I won't say too much more. In fact, I'm talking to some prominent rugby boys today about it. So it's sort of always like when you've got that excitement about new stuff and it's working and the public are getting something and you're getting money out of it and you don't have to do a lot of work yourself. that's the ideal business, isn't it?
It is, but going back to my question, do you miss talking to the 18 clubs and the players every day?
Not really, no. Like, because of what happened, the AFLPA suspended me for 2 years, 4 weeks after the so-called incident or whatever, 12 years ago. 8 months later, the police came out and said, "Oh, you did nothing wrong." And I said, "How can you get suspended if you did nothing wrong?" "Ricky will reinstate you." "Reinstate me? I just lost $15 million, 4 properties, you name it." I said, "I'm never going back to the AFL ever." And in the last 10 years, some big leaders at the AFL, including on the commission, have asked me to come with you. Apart from the concussion stuff I'm doing with my motor, I mean, player management, I'll never go back into it.
Wow, interesting. All right, Ricky, one last one before you go. To all these upcoming AFL footballers, aspiring athletes, what words of advice do you have for these athletes when they're looking to choose a manager that's best for them in their career?
Look, I think you've got to pick a manager that you feel is right for you, and not every managers are. I'm sure there was players that, perhaps at the end of the day, I wasn't the right. Like, I know I had to employ other managers because the Ablets, Careys, Dunstals, Locketts were taking up so much time. I didn't have time for a draft pick. I mean, I'd do his contract and, talking and that, but I had an assistant agent who got to actually look after them. So my advice would be, choose the one that you think will work for you, who can get you to the best club that you want to play at, or you feel that, he has a good knowledge of the game, because let's face it, there's not too many ex-players who are managers. Craig Kelly's at Collingwood now, but had his own management company. Liam Pickering, can't think of too many more. Paul Connors didn't play AFL, but that doesn't mean he's vastly experienced in contract negotiations and managing players, etc. So yeah, my advice are 2 things. One, look for the person who marries up to you and you think has got the time for you and has the contacts and networks and is not a bullshitter. And also challenge yourself to reach the top of the mountain by doing things that you haven't done before.
Chicken, fantastic answer. I've got one more for you, which will be music.
No, I don't want to.
Which will be music to the ears of so many athletes, not only in this country but around the world, particularly the AFL contingent. Are AFL players underpaid?
They're not underpaid. Sorry, I was looking at an article I wrote for Inside Football 5 years ago. Now, it's a joke that Wayne Carey was earning more than Dustin Martin in 2000. Like what Dustin gets in 2023 is the same, roughly the same, what Wayne Carey got in 2000. Why is that? It's because players who are worth 200,000 are getting 450 or 500,000, and the trade period doesn't help that, because just about every player who gets traded gets a better deal than what they're worth. And look at the Grundy situation. The only winner out of all this is Grundy, unless he gets a flag at Sydney. So yeah, it's interesting times.
So are they underpaid?
Sorry, I didn't answer that question. Well, the answer is that they are underpaid. The top players are underpaid by a lot. And I think back in 2010, there were 16 players on over $1 million, and now it's something like 7 or 8. So the stars of the game are not getting what they're worth, and the rejects of the game are getting 3 times more.
So if you were Andrew Dillon or Gil McLaughlin or Craig Kelly or Amit Baines, who should be the highest paid player and what should their salary be?
Well, my view is this too, and this is not criticism, but it is. The AFL and the managers and agents should be working together to make more money for the players off the field, and that doesn't happen anymore. I mean, I created Club 10 in 1995. The players are getting an extra $100 grand. It's $1 million back in 1995, but they got about 250 grand the first year. Why doesn't the AFL create a new Club 10, and they can have girls from AFLW in it and sell it to Telstra, sell it to Foxtel, sell it to the biggest companies in Australia and earn money for Dustin Martin like he deserves, and Toby Green, in my opinion, the best player in the game at the moment. He should be on or earning probably 2 to 3 million, not 1.2 or 3 or 1.5.
Wow, there you go. Spoken by the man himself. Ladies and gentlemen, Ricky Nixon, thank you very much for joining us on Raw Sports.
Chicken.
Bye.
All right, Chicken. Catch you, mate. See you later.
Bye.
What a fantastic chat, Ahmed.
Absolutely, mate. I mean, he's got a wealth of knowledge to share with us, and he shared a ton there. It's interesting. something that we always talk about is that pay, the underpay. And honestly, I think he pretty much validated what we've been talking about for the last few weeks. I mean, just actually one topic that me and you've spoken about off air is this whole marketing of players. And if you see what he said at the end, there's nothing of that. There isn't much of that anymore, really.
Yeah, look, he actually, with Ricky's knowledge of the game and the intricacies of deals and player agents and player salaries, there's no one better versed to be able to give us that insight into who he thinks should be earning, twice what they are, and how, even at the end of it, he turned around and said, well, why isn't the AFL creating a top 10? What do they call it? Flying starts, was it the top 10? Club 10. Sorry, Club 10.
Yeah.
And you can include male and female footballers and sell it off to a Telstra or an Optus or a Foxtel or whoever it may be, somebody of a blue chip organisation to sponsor these guys, to give them a greater understanding and build their net worth off the field. It's really quite smart.
Yeah, I mean, and it's one of the reasons why we're seeing this poor effort when it comes to marketing players to different brands off the field, and there just simply isn't the effort there anymore.
Well,
and it's like he mentioned to you in the 90s, Gary Ablett is getting deals for $100,000 off the field. Where's that happening now? Like, how often is that happening?
Well, exactly. I know one player that was mentioned by Ricky Nixon was offered, I think, $15,000 to $20,000 to do an advertisement for cash converters. It's not good enough.
That's the point. And like, if we compare 100,000 back then to now, houses were selling in Victoria for $20,000-$30,000, right?
Yeah.
And that's not too far away from the CBD. So that's 3 to 4 houses.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's huge money. It's not just not happening anymore, and it's really a catastrophe. But anyway, we'll keep going.
Well, we will. I think our next guest may have just texted, so give me 1 second. Ahmed?
Yep. Do you think, mate? Yeah, so pretty much.
Hopefully.
Tony's back. So, yeah, I mean.
Sorry, mate, go on.
What we're seeing here is, I mean, we're living through a moment in time where, again, the big monster up the top, which is the AFL, is pretty
big
much
monster up the top. Yeah,
which it's in my opinion, it's the big bully. They're making all the money along with their corporate partners, and really they're trickling a bit down.
Yeah,
but are these players really seeing what they should be seeing? No. In my opinion,
in terms of the player money pool and the CBA?
Exactly.
Well, you brought this up on one of our previous episodes. The AFL players, I think, have just signed off on a deal to get 33%. I think that might be right. Whereas you actually said that some of the international leagues, be it soccer and or NFL and the NBA, are closer to 50.
Exactly. So they're still way off.
What's a travesty?
They just signed a deal for a media rights deal, which Gil McLaughlin guides about, for $4.5 billion.
Yeah.
And hang on a second. All right, that's all great and well, but where's that money going? I mean, this is, again, one of the key issues. I know I sound like a broken record here, but it really is. It's a problem. But anyway, we'll keep going. All right, let's recap the grand final. One of the greatest grand finals I have ever witnessed myself. Really, unbelievable.
Yeah, I concur.
I will say it was until that last minute, nobody knew who was going to win. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Bobby Hill, what a performance! I was watching with a few mates, and they said to me, "Dake," I was like, "What are you talking about?" Bobby Hill's been there every time they've needed an answer. He was there. Bang, goal. He was unstoppable. They just couldn't come near him.
Yep, and also took mark of the day. That hover, I think, was it over Zach Bailey? Anyway, everyone knows the mark I was referring to. And you know the other thing is, the other aspect of Bobby Hill's game, he was smart enough to kick the ball to Scott Pendlebury, knowing his age, his input to the black and white, and the ability for them to have just rewards for kicking a goal in the grand final. I thought that was almost, it didn't get him over the line, but to kick 4 goals and Bobby Hill give the footy off to Pendlebury just shows what sort of a footballer he is.
Yeah, now, one of the downfalls of the actual grand final was actually the broadcasting. But before we get into that, our guest has just joined us. We'll just let him through. We'll just bring him on. Just in a second. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We have a very special guest joining us.
Andrew McManus.
Hello, boys. How are you?
Andrew, welcome to the show. The music maestro from Australia who brought Kiss out for the AFL Grand Final. I'm sure you're the AFL's poster boy now, considering the success of Saturday. What were your thoughts?
Look, we're ecstatic, and I must admit I was really surprised because I've had to come back up to the Gold Coast for a few days to deal with a few other things for the next, not only my best mate dog, but I've got the cause coming up next, and we're doing like the Melbourne Cup and all these other projects, and they are there's just a lot on, and plus dealing with now obviously with Kiss playing their final ever show in Sydney this Saturday. It was easier for me to come home and just manage the logistics from here for 2 days, and then on a plane tonight and back to Sydney. But it was interesting when I was up here. I was listening to the radio yesterday just by fluke, and they did a quick interview and outtake by Gil, and his commentary was that one of the greatest things he was leaving the AFL was with the Kiss performance, which at this point of time had doubled the reaction to, although, as he said, Robbie Williams was fantastic, but at this point of time in like 24 hours after or whatever, Robbie had something like 470,000 views on YouTube and socials, whereas Kiss is already over 1 million.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. And he was just saying how that, without degrading anyone, the Kiss had just put the bar so high, and he didn't know who was going to follow us next year. But I do have an idea.
Wow. Care to share?
Can't share any on it, but there's a lot of work to be done. But it just people don't realise how much work goes into 15 minutes. Like it was just, and I got to tip my hat to Travis Hogan and Tom O'Connell. They were from Mushroom Events. They were just spectacular to work with. Great guys. There was a few times there. We were put before the cosh with the band, wanting to change this or change that. And thankfully, when I jumped in and sort of, smoothed the waters, they remained and stayed with the plan. And at the end of the day, the end product is what we envisaged from the day one, 4 weeks prior to us getting the nod that we had the gig, to then getting into creative and the vision of the stage, the kids. I really wanted that Kiss sign with all the kids on the oval. And even though it was only like a 30-second shot, that took 3 weeks to get the kids to learn how to do that. And wow. It's just so much time, effort, and preparation went into that. And with Robert Long, Kiss's production manager as well, being as professional as he is as well, I got to tip my hat to him. And thank God, I had him to fall back on from our side of things. That show was developed, created, and because we had all these other crazy ideas about flying the band in via a helicopter originally.
Wow.
But the MCG killed that off because of, one, insurance, and two, the fear of potentially like a wind gust or whatever. And then we went through the whole process of what about flying Paul in on a zip line, and all the experts came in and they basically, which I don't necessarily agree, but they reckon they would have to have flown it from the scoreboard down, which was just too dangerous. So I had to kill that off. So the buggy idea and then the reveal on stage was how we ended up doing it. But it worked, And I think, as you guys would be more than aware, social media and the overall response has been phenomenal. And as much as I love the rugby league and I felt for them when socials just attacked their product. But that's life.
It is life. So, mate, as a spectacle, it looked absolutely fantastic. I think everybody wanted Kiss to be as good as Robbie Williams, if not better, and they certainly performed. Now we want to know, what did Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley and the crew think about the big day on Saturday?
Oh, they were pumped. We sort of had a quick debrief very quickly at the end of it, and Paul just, and I'm not, stroking my ego in any way, shape, or form, but he said to me, the 5 biggest events in the Kiss history, I've been involved with 2 of them now, and that was Kiss Symphony when we did that back in 2003 when I put Kiss in front of 38,000 people at the then Telstra Dome with the the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra all in Kiss makeup, and now the grand final. So that's, pretty proud of that. And they were, the hard part about it is coming down from it all. We put so much effort into it, and it was on such a high to then sort of come down and go, okay, now we've got to get ready for Sydney. So that's the job.
Andrew, so I'm a big follower of American sport. I do business in the States, so on and so on. And the NFL halftime show is a true spectacle. I mean, as everyone knows,
Sure.
a lot of the performers, they perform for free, and and the amount of press and media it gets, billions of impressions. Obviously, Australia's a lot smaller country. If we can compare, we don't have to compare exactly, obviously, apple for apple, but we set a bar. That pre-game entertainment by Kiss was magnificent, was amazing. How much of an impact would you say does it have on the actual Kiss brand, and how long after does that impact last?
That's hard. That's a good question. It's hard to say, but we actually we set the tone as the Super Bowl, and that was the belief. And that's when I first called them and said, look, this is what's available. This is what I really want to do. And you would have seen comments in the Herald Sun. I've got the band available, but no one's called me yet. And all these type of things. So we sort of started our own, role of
Your own campaign,
availability and wanting to do it, and et cetera, et cetera. And then Gil and Kylie came to us and said, "Yep, look, people power is speaking. We're getting that much." Correspondence and requests and people saying, this is, if anyone's ever going to follow Robbie, it's Kiss. And kudos again to the AFL lifting the bar as high as they did with Robbie. And kudos to him again to saying, yay, let's give, McManus and the band a run. And thankfully we delivered, and thankfully now, the response, as I said, is incredible, and it's just spreading. You got to remember too, at 100,000 people there with phones recording it and showing it, and so the actual number of people that this has got to, you'd never really know. But I know that from the television point of view, Channel 7 sent me the figures. It was 4.98 million viewers, with 754,000 on 7 Mate. Which is 22% up on the year before. So already, there's 5 million viewers in Australia watched us. And then in America, it was on Fox Sports 1, it was in the UK, and so many people around the world saw it. And that will continually be spread. Like we put it up on Kiss Online, that just gets millions of views as well. So it's part of the band's legacy now, and the part of the band's DNA, and albeit they do finish on December 2 in New York, and what they have planned there is just out of this world. I think New York's giving them the keys to the city, and for the whole week leading into those last 2 shows, New York is just going to be Kiss York. It's just some of the things they've told me that they're doing is just incredible, and I just think that this will just be part of when people Google Kiss, it'll come up, and it's for there forever and a day.
Andrew, one more, Andrew, or at least from me. Where did you and the band celebrate Saturday night?
We were pretty knackered, so we went pretty well much after the game. Went back to the hotel, had an early dinner, because the band flew to Sydney and I flew home. So because the guys don't drink. So it's pretty lucky, and they're so professional. They're now in game mode for the big last ever Sydney show this Saturday out at Accor Stadium.
Fantastic. One last question from me, Andrew. Kiss is an older brand. It's no secret. What's the strategy for them staying so relevant? And in this instance, you have a young audience, also a huge young audience that tunes into the AFL Grand Final. What's your mechanism of relating to the two different audiences?
Well, the great thing about Kiss is the Kiss Army hand the torch down to their kids. And when I go to like this weekend, we have to make our shows all ages, and it's just and you saw the little kids that ran out on the field that actually they're now doing their own press conferences and have got their own they've got their own stardom, being the young Kiss team, and they loved it, and that it's just one of those bands that once you're fanatical or part of it, you pass the torch down to your kids, and the kids fall in love with the band. And let's be honest, today's music, there's not a lot of great songs that are coming out. You got your Taylor Swifts and potentially your Eds and whatever, but outside of that, people are gravitating so much to heritage bands, the Journeys, the Foreigners, the Kiss, the Aerosmiths, and all the rest of it. Younger people of today are going, this is great music. Even the Beatles. How many young kids are still getting turned on to great songs? And that's what it all comes down to. And unfortunately, a lot of today's musicians are not writing great songs, or songs that'll stand the test of time. And whereas, the bands of the 70s and the 80s had a formula, for want of a better word, with the big anthems and the hooks and the meaningfulness, which is going to stand the test of time. And albeit Kiss do, take off the makeup on December 2 in New York, I know they've got plans to keep their legacy going and their legacy alive. And it'll be really interesting to see how they do that, because there's no one who's more professional, and Gene is just an absolute genius marketeer. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what their next steps are and what their next plans are.
Ladies and gentlemen, the man behind
all right, Andrew, thank you very much. We definitely appreciate you.
Absolute pleasure, guys, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you, mate.
God bless you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Well, there you go. I mean, what a moment. I mean, Andrew McManus joining us on the show, taking us through that whole absolute, what is a good word for it? I mean, to really
extravaganza.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. What a show that was.
And go on.
Yeah, if we go back, I mean, we were one of the ones earlier on that said, Kiss again, so on and so on. Like, let's be honest, mate. We are more than happy to front the music when we have to. But that was a show that was unbelievable, very impressive, innovative, I believe, in the way they came across. And they just made themselves super relevant again and got the whole country talking about them again.
Oh, exactly. And the other thing is, we could feel the passion and the enthusiasm, Andrew, taking us inside. how it came about that KISS was a consideration for the AFL pre-game entertainment, and also some of the ideas that went into getting KISS to the MCG and potentially dropping in from a helicopter, and how the kids became an influential part of their act. It was just fantastic to see and listen to him.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we thank him very, very much. Let's go back to the big day. I mean, we had a few conversations earlier about, before Andrew just joined us, about the broadcast. Watching this game, biggest game of the year, you have millions of tuning in, and Channel 7 just could not get it right, mate. I mean, if we show some of the footage that we've seen, like this example here, right, you'll see it's blurry. I mean, you'll see on our screen now, it's blurry, all right? And there was other instances, and plenty of people, and Rowan Conley is a respected figure, of course, and what he shared is what we were all feeling at the time. And it's really disappointing to actually see this, because at the end of the day, what we're seeing is 5 million people tuning in, and literally one word short of rubbish. That's what they witnessed.
No, well, I think that's a bit unfair to call it rubbish, but
no. Hang on a second, all right? And let me tell you why, right? How can I sit there? I'm watching, what's his name, lining up to kick for goal,
Bone recruit,
multiple times. Do you know what angle I was seeing? His thighs, his hamstrings, and the back of his legs. Where's the ball going? The ball's lost. They lost the ball multiple times. The ball, instead of showing us the whole footage, like that whole view of the ball going into the goal, they're showing us the last 2 seconds of where the ball's rolling in. It's like,
yeah,
and that was countless times, Tony. It wasn't just once. I was complaining about it on Saturday, but anyway.
Yeah. Oh, look, look, my only criticism of Channel 7 from the Saturday Grand Final was everybody who wasn't at the ground wanted to see Paul Stanley smash the guitar, and we missed it.
Yeah, that was a big moment.
Well, it was a huge moment.
Yeah,
it was just that was disappointing. But look, Channel 7, look, they've had the Grand Final for decades. They did a pretty good job considering. I think, particularly you being a sports nut and others, would like to see more innovative technology brought into the broadcasting of games, particularly the AFL Grand Final. But we hope and see that something new and innovative can come into the season 2024.
Well, we tweeted about this yesterday, actually. The NFL had a game in London, and they had the game called the Toy Story game.
Yes, I think we were discussing this last week.
Yeah, so this happened a couple of days, literally yesterday. So the top of the screen, one of the broadcasts, top of the screen was the actual game. The bottom was the Toy Story version of the game. Now, how many kids tuned in? How many people were talking about it? And how awesome is that, right? So again, this goes back to our constant conversations about the lack of innovation in the game, the lack of thinking outside the box. It's sad. But anyway, we'll just keep going. All right. One of the conversations that came up as well after the Grand Final is this comparison between the AFL Grand Final and the Matildas. And I'm about to show on screen now some of the articles from apparently esteemed newspapers like the Financial Review. I mean, what in the world is going on here? Is there a secret or a quiet civil war that we don't know about, or like what is there a code war that people need to know about, or what?
Well, it's funny because the image that we're showing on screen is from Clive Dickens. He used to be an executive with, funnily enough, the Channel 7 network. He's now with Optus Sport, and obviously they were the rights holders for the recent Female World Cup, which was played here in Australia and New Zealand. But why do we have to make it about the Matildas, the female Matildas, and the ratings success compared to the AFL? The AFL is played every year. It's a national sport, whereas the Matildas is an international sport. And we don't begrudge the Matildas for getting some 11 million views and streams, and the AFL somewhere around the 5.5 million streams. It shouldn't be a comparison. the Women's World Cup's held once every 4 years.
And not only that, the whole country's going for one team. Here you got the country split up into 18. What are you talking about? I don't understand what are you trying to prove here? What do you want to start comparing numbers? Let's start comparing memberships. Let's start comparing in regular season games. Let's start comparing media rights, sponsorship.
Exactly.
What do you want to compare? I don't understand. Like, what are you trying to say or do? You look like an idiot doing so. Like, it's just so silly. It's not even funny.
You brought up a really good point, because Rupert Murdoch and Kerry Stokes have combined to pay $4.5 billion for a 5-year deal for the AFL rights. Channel 7 paid $4.5 million for 4 weeks of the Women's World Cup.
Exactly. And it's just so unnecessary. It just creates this culture of two sides, of the side that is now going to turn on them and say, stuff you and what you present. You're starting to pretty much beat the drum to this divisive culture. And so I can say, oh, women's just unnecessary. Just do your thing, mate. Be good at what you do. Give them an opportunity, and that's it. Move on. Some people like soccer, some people like football. That ain't compare the two. There's more members. There's more AFL members in the country than what there is soccer players. Literally, like, no joke. So it's silly. But anyway, we'll keep going.
Well, the other thing is, just before we leave this topic, the other thing is that the AFL is probably a 50-week sport, whereas the Matildas, outside of Sam Kerr, who's an international sporting icon, I reckon it would be hard pressed for the Australian public to recognise anyone else from the team.
Oh, mate, it's not even. It doesn't even compare. But anyway, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole of female football and AFL football. It's just unnecessary. Okay, we'll keep going. Some controversy around Scott Pendlebury and his boots. You want to take us through it, mate?
Well, the fantastic photo there from the AFL's Michael Wilson, and somebody alerted this to me on Sunday, I think it was, and said, check out Pendlebury's boots. They believe they are metal studs, which we believe have been banned by the AFL. Now, look, from us, I think there was another photo as well, which actually highlighted the fact that he could have been those Puma-wearing metal studs and that they could be banned. So, look, we haven't sought clarification on that as yet, Ahmed, but it'll be interesting to see whether somebody picks this up. Look, it's a minute part of the wash-up of the game, but I think people would still be interested to see whether these boots are legal and would be potentially outlawed, even though Pendlebury comes a 2-time premiership star and probably wouldn't give two hoots about it.
Oh, I mean, it's worth talking about, but it's never going to make a difference. But, you know, it's worth bringing up. But our friend...
Yeah, I think that sorry.
Go on, man. Go on.
It's a little tidbit that I think people would be interested to know whether Puma and Pendlebury have to work out whether those boots are allowed.
Absolutely. They should definitely look into it. Our friend Ollie Markov had a few interesting things to say.
Yeah, he did.
So, rocks up to Mad Monday.
Yes.
Wearing the Carlton T-shirt. And
well, for all those Melbourne drinkers, this is the Sporting Globe opposite the Richmond Town Hall on Bridge Road in Richmond, which is where Collingwood started their Mad Monday celebrations. Now, the reason Oleg Markov, the premiership player from Saturday, is wearing a Carlton training top is he was on Carlton's sup list and didn't make it. He's now a Collingwood premiership star at the Magpies.
What could have been?
What could have been?
Yeah.
Look, I know it was lighthearted, but a lot of people are giving him some stick online. So we just wonder, look, you know, a little bit of banter here and there is great. But look, I understand it's a talking topic. I don't really have an issue with it. I actually like the fact that there's really good banter and Carlton and Collingwood hate each other.
Oh, it does very well for the game. I mean, who the hell doesn't want to see those two at odds? I mean, it is ridiculous. When those two play, it's like it's literally a civil war. You're just waiting for something to happen in the crowd. But it's hopefully that will inspire the Carlton faithful to rock up next year and play in the last Saturday of September.
Yeah.
So So we'll stay on the grand final.
Well, can I just make one more point?
Please.
I don't want cancel culture to take over society. So in terms of if Oleg Markov is going to wear a Carlton jumper and then he is forced to apologise, the world has gone completely bonkers.
Why should he apologise?
No, but I'm just saying, I'm wondering whether people, people are saying that he's out of line and he shouldn't actually be doing that.
Get over yourselves. Move on.
Well, I agree.
Drink a cup of concrete. All right, we'll keep going. The Premiership medal saga is back again, Tony. And it seems to be on repeat every single year. We hear a disheartening story of a player getting injured. Oh, here we go again. We're talking about it again. A Collingwood great, AFL legend.
Well, he's a Collingwood captain and Premiership
Tony
captain
Shaw.
from 1990.
Absolutely.
Yep.
He's an AFL great and legend. All players on the list shouldn't get a Premiership medal. It's harsh and brutal, but I wouldn't think any non-competing player would be comfortable with it. All for in-house recognition of some form. You're a Premiership player or you're not. What do you reckon, Tony?
Now, I'm a little bit with Tony Shaw here. And look, as tough as it is, and I'm sure Dan McStay and John Noble and Taylor Adams would have given their left leg to play in Saturday's game, but they didn't. And I know it takes an organisation to get to the last Saturday in September, but I think for the 23 players who played on the day, I think it should be kept to those players and the coach to make it as elite as it is. Giving out Premiership medals to the players who played in the reserves for the majority of the year, yes, they played a role, but it's not. This isn't a participation sport. This is the cream of the crop. We've got to isolate and elevate the best players in the country. Therefore, it is such a privilege to play in the grand final and a winning one on the last Saturday in September.
I am one of the biggest criticisers of participation awards because I think they breed a culture of soft, spoiled brats. But, geez, Noble was stiff.
Yeah, Noble was stiff. Well, Billy Frampton came in and had 2 possessions.
Frampton did his job, Tony. Harris Andrews is one of
No, I was actually making a statement, not a criticism.
Yeah. He had 2 positions, but he played a role, significant role that I think won them the game. Because if Harris Andrews starts intercepting and playing back there the way he wants to play, Collingwood's not kicking any goals anytime soon. So
yeah, no, I know, and I think Mark Robinson from Melbourne's Herald Sun actually highlighted that in a story on Sunday. So I'm all for Billy Frampton getting a Premiership medal. I actually feel for Taylor Adams. Really hit him hard after the game, crying on the field.
He was crying his eyes out.
Well, because he knows Taylor Adams may never see a Collingwood jumper again.
Potentially, especially after their CEO came out. It's Craig Kelly, isn't it? He came out yesterday and said, based on the way these new compensation picks have been given to the AFL and the way the draft is looking the next few years, we need to restructure our list to pretty much work around that, which is honestly, I find really intelligent, really smart and innovative because they're working with the current and not off a method that's worked in the past. So even though that they won a flag this year. So props to him. Well done. It's been a long show. Some interesting guests. Ricky Nixon, Andrew McManus. Lots to talk about, lots of nuggets. And here we are. We've come to the end. And as I do every single episode, Mr. Tony Sheet, I come to you for some words of wisdom.
Yeah, the words of wisdom are, Kiss, you will never, ever replicate what you did on Saturday, but good luck in Sydney.
Wow, there you go. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning into Raw Sport. We absolutely love you guys. Take care, everyone. We'll catch you all on Thursday. See you later.